Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Nicola Donnelly, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Captain Roland Padilla. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you are able, students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record, which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Archibald Gascoyne. Archibald Gascoyne was born in 1887 in Euroa, Victoria, each of 11 children born to George Gascoyne, a laborer, and his wife, Margaret. Archie received his education at the local public school before working as a laborer, like his father. Archie Gascoyne enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 4th of February 1915 and was assigned to Alpha Company of the 22nd Battalion. After a short period of training in Australia, he married Emily Henrietta Dighton, with whom he already had 2 sons, Frederick and Cyril. When he embarked from Melbourne in May, his wife was pregnant with a 3rd son, Gordon, whom Private Gascoyne would never meet. After a short stop in Egypt, Gascoyne joined the rest of his unit on the Gallipoli Peninsula. By this time, most of the fighting was over. Gascoyne and his comrades were largely engaged in defensive and routine duties in the trenches until December, when his unit departed the peninsula as part of the Allied evacuation. His battalion returned to Alexandria in early 1916. In March, Gascoyne and his comrades embarked for the French city of Marseille. From there, the 22nd Battalion was sent north towards the border of France and Belgium. In July, they were sent south to take part in an offensive on the Somme near the village of Pozières. It had been razed to the ground by shell fire as Allied forces attempted to push the enemy back from the high ground along Pozières Bridge. Gascoyne and his comrades first entered the lines around the 27th of July and experienced relentless shelling and machine gun fire. During this attack, Gascoyne was buried alive by a shell and knocked unconscious for 2 hours. He was rescued and evacuated to a casualty clearing station behind the lines for treatment. When he awoke, he was sent to Hospital England for treatment of wounds and shell shock. Gascoyne rejoined his unit in April 1917 as the enemy was making a strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg line. Their retreat was eagerly followed by Allied units that seized their opportunity to push the enemy back. In advancing on the Germans, these units were confronted by well-prepared rear-guard defenses and booby-trapped towns. Only weeks after rejoining his unit, Gascoyne's battalion was drawn into the fighting when the Allies mounted a second attack on the village of Boulecourt, which had been incorporated into the enemy's new front line. An attack on the village the month before had been absolute carnage. Under heavy machine gun and artillery fire, and without the expected support of tanks, Australian units suffered over 3,000 casualties in one day. The second attack started at 3:45 a.m. on the 3rd of May. Gascoyne and his comrades moved off under cover of their barrage, headed towards the enemy trenches. Just minutes later, the enemy opened their own artillery barrage on the advancing troops, causing many casualties and forcing them back from their objectives. After heavy fighting, however, Allied forces eventually took their objectives after more than 1 week. This success came at the cost of a further 7,000 casualties. Among the missing was Private Archibald Gascoyne. Gascoyne remained listed as missing in action for several months. Without news, his family suffered from increasing anxiety. It was not until November 1917 that military authorities held a court of inquiry which determined that Gascoyne had been killed in action during his unit's attack on the 3rd of May 1917. His commanding officer wrote to Gascoyne's wife, "Private Gascoyne went over the top with the party to go out into position. He was never seen again, and nothing can be found out as to his fate. Probably he was killed by a shell or bullet. A good soldier and a brave man. I knew him well and much deplore the uncertainty of his fate." To this day, Private Gascoyne's exact fate remains unknown. He is remembered on the Australian Memorial at VA Bretonneau in France, among thousands of other Australians who have no known grave. Private Archie Gascoyne was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honor in my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the VA Bretonneau is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Archibald Gascoyne, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.